We're very honored to have a return visit from Sid Burks. If you remember, he gave a presentation last December on the Salton Sea and its role in naval aviation history. And he's actually going to be doing a reprise of that presentation at the Air Museum in November, if you're interested in seeing it again, or if you missed it the first time. Sid Burks, I'm going to reference my notes here. He's been involved in education and training for over 40 years. He recently retired from the California Community College teaching as a teacher and also dean of the aviation maintenance and automotive technology divisions, among others, at Chaffey College. He currently teaches at Cal State San Bernardino, at both the Palm Desert and San Bernardino campuses. And he's just a real aviation and his history enthusiast. We're delighted to welcome Sid Burks.
Red light song, is that a new song?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you, Kelly. I did give a presentation last December on the Salton Sea, the military history of the Salton Sea, and I've since updated a little bit, so if you'll indulge me, I'd like to share that with you. I found out that in the early 50s, there were some air speed records set at the Salton Sea, and they were set in a F-86 Sabre jet, and they flew about 120 feet off the deck, which was still about the same distance below sea level, because as you know, the Salton Sea is about 240, 50 feet below sea level. And the reason they did this was because flying below, I'm told, flying below sea level delayed the negative aspects of going supersonic and allowed the pilot to maintain control. And I don't know about you, but if I'm going 700 miles an hour, 120 feet off the deck, I want all the control I can get. So anyway, so shortly thereafter, the next year, in 1953, another Air Force pilot in the same airplane, same type aircraft, did a little bit better. And then also in 53, the Navy topped their record, and this Skyray, which interestingly enough was a box stock carrier airplane complete with tailhook. Well, the Air Force couldn't have that, so they brought down a prototype F-100 Super Sabre from what's now Edwards, and a hotshot test pilot to get the speed record back at 755 miles an hour. And then after that, they changed the requirements for setting speed records. They had to be done at altitude. So for a couple of years, the Salton Sea was a hot place to set a speed record. And the other update is I found by accident what the remains of 2 remote camera sites, 2 of the 7 that the Atomic Energy Commission built in 1946, 1947. One is on the west side, or the east side of the 86 Expressway, south of Salton City. The other's on the north side of Salton City, on the west side of 86. And these, like I said, were remote camera sites where they filmed atomic bomb shapes, not the bombs themselves, but the shapes, being dropped from 30,000 feet. Okay. And interestingly enough, I couldn't find anybody in Salton City that either knew or cared what these things were. And I had to do a lot of research to figure out what they were doing. Anyway, this story today is about the Palm Desert Airpark and the Desert Air Hotel, which is actually now in Rancho Mirage. At the time it was in Palm Desert. And several years ago, I wrote a letter to when I became aware of the Palm Desert Airpark, I wrote a letter to the Historical Society of Palm Desert asking if they had any information. Well, I get a call from this gentleman, Dan Callahan, right away, and he wants to know if I'm writing a book. And I said, no, I'm sorry, I'm not writing a book. And I could tell he was kind of disappointed. But at any rate, he's a real gentleman, was a real gentleman. He met with me, gave me a lot of information about the Palm Desert Airpark and other historical sites like the Shadow Mountain Club in Palm Desert. And he actually managed the Desert Air Hotel in Palm Desert Airpark for his uncle. And you can see younger dapper Dan here dining at the Palm Desert Airpark with his companion. And unfortunately, Dan passed away a few years ago. He's a real gentleman, and he was like a walking history of this part of the valley. He was also president of the Historical Society of Palm Desert for many years. So anyway, that's how I got started with looking into what was going on at the Palm Desert Airpark. And He did get his book. This is actually a book you can buy in the bookstore called Palm Springs Holiday, and it depicts the Palm Desert Airpark. In fact, right there it says Desert Airpark. And there's one chapter on the Palm Desert Airpark and the Desert Air Hotel and cottages. The airpark was around from 1947 to 1970. The hotel and cottages were around from 1951 till 1968. They were really kind of the same business. The airpark was open year-round, but the hotel, the restaurant, and the bar closed in the summer. Although I'm led to believe that if you flew in there as a pilot and you needed a drink, you could find one. So anyway, we'll talk first about the airpark and then about the hotel. So this is a guy that started everything. His name is Henry Gogarty, and he was a big-time architect. He's also a sportsman, and he also liked to fly. He designed 350 community colleges and high schools in California. He also built jails. As an educator, I find that interesting. That when I stop and think about it, there's really not all that much difference. He also designed a lot of really historic Art Deco buildings in the Los Angeles area. And he designed the Grand Central Air Terminal, which if you're in Glendale, which if you're not familiar was the airport for Los Angeles before LAX was built after World War II. And he built the Hercules campus where they put together the Spruce Goose. He designed that for Howard Hughes. So I didn't realize what a big deal architect he was till I got into it and started researching what he'd done. He also was part of a committee that designed the administration building for LAX before the war, but by the time the war was over, they kind of started all over again from scratch. Hank starts putting together a desert vacation ranch in what's now Rancho Mirage in 1936. It's near the corner of Eisenhower, where Eisenhower Medical Center is, and Rancho Mirage, which would be Bob Hope and Country Club. And he commutes back and forth from Glendale in one of two Waco cabin biplanes that he owns, one red, one blue. You've got to like somebody that's got color-coded airplanes, right? And he names his ranch appropriately Rancho Hankaroo. Gives you a little insight on what the guy's like. Oh, by the way, he paid, I won't get that. So in 1941, he actually was landing on a dirt road, which now is called Country Club. He makes himself a permanent runway, and he makes the inaugural flight, only he chose December 7th, 1941. And so when he takes off and makes his inaugural flight and lands, he finds out that war's been declared and civil aviation is basically on hold for the next several years. So he doesn't get to use his new runway very much. In 1945, he starts acquiring land for the Palm Desert Airpark, and this is a dream he had of a 100-home airpark in the desert. And he pays for his first acquisition. He paid a whopping $9.50 an acre. Okay. He eventually ends up with 320 acres, roughly where Rancho Las Palmas Country Club and the shopping center at 111 and Bob Hope, which is kind of being redeveloped now. And his first use of it is a Mirage Park airstrip, which was actually a flying school. And then in 1946 and 1947, he opens the airpark. Never ends up building any of these homes, but he's got plans. And later on, it starts off with one grass runway, and later on he has another one. And these are both lighted, and they have sprinklers. And the saying was, if you landed when the sprinklers came on, you got your airplane washed for free. And in 1968, he sold it. We'll get into that. And by 1970, it was gone. So here's, this will be later after the second runway was added. This is the Whitewater River wash, and the main runway and then the crosswind runway. And you can see some of the outline. We'll have better pictures in a minute. And some weekends there'd be over 100 aircraft tied down there at the airpark. You can see all different. And then when they added the second runway, this area here you can see is a little wider. That was made into a polo field. And this just wasn't some, Bush League polo field. It was actually quite well regarded, and they played quite a few championship games there. And you can see here they're playing polo with the airplanes in the background. And the saying was you didn't want to get your airplane hit with whatever it is they knock around in polo games. And apparently that happened a couple times. Some of the prominent pilots that flew in, you can see. President Eisenhower would come over from Palm Springs Airport in his helicopter. President Nixon landed there, and quite a few celebrities. Edgar Bergen and Charlie McCarthy, as you probably know, Charlie McCarthy was a dummy. And he'd leave him at the controls of the airplane while he went in the restaurant. People would walk by and take a second take at the dummy at the controls. There's quite a lot of stuff that went on. The airpark was either the beginning or the end of several air races. And bonanza events were popular there. And you can see right here, there's a V-tail bonanza that's on display. And the West Coast distributor for the bonanzas would have his product rollouts out here at the Palm Desert Airpark. And that's probably what this was. This was probably a new model bonanza. And then once a year, Santa Claus would show up and they'd fly over the valley and drop little leaflets telling the kids to come to the airpark to pick up their Christmas present. And the airpark was featured in TV shows and movies. One of the ones was the second Bob Cummings series, 1961 and 62. Had him flying D-18 Bonanzas, and then also the Aero car. I think this was pretty much a marketing tool for the Aero car. That's why they gave it to him. And he would give usually pretty girls a ride in the airplane. I understand Marilyn Monroe got several rides, but it was featured on his TV show. And in 1963, part of the Mad, Mad, Mad World comedy was filmed there. This is Mickey Rooney and Buddy Hackett trying to get past this guy to get into the clubhouse to talk Jim Backus and to take them where they wanted to go in his Beechcraft. And actually in the movie, the video, there's several scenes inside the Palm Desert Airpark. So if you see that on late night or you got a copy of it, you might want to look at that. Also, there's in that same video, there's some interesting scenes of the old Palm Desert Airport and up in 29 Palms and some other places. Kind of interesting. This came out of a video, that's why it's so grainy, but this is a picture of the Goodyear blimp at the airpark in 1968. I don't know what the occasion was. It was probably a golf tournament they were filming. So much for the airpark. Then we get into the hotel itself. And its official name was Hotel and Cottages. And the whole thing, the hotel sort of evolved. In 1947, Gogarty buys up some war surplus barracks in Beaumont and has them trucked into the airpark. And he uses them to rent to his pilot buddies that want someplace to stay when they fly out to the desert. And they eventually get upgraded. And then he had an old building on the premises that he converted to a dining room and a rec area in 1950. So in 1950, he builds a restaurant called the Compass Room, which was round and had windows so you could see the airplane. He built a very big swimming pool and then a bar called the Luau Hut. The Compass Room restaurant's interesting. You can see it right here. It's a round building with windows. And there was a magnetic anomaly right there which has caused compasses to go crazy. So Hankaroo, being the Hankaroo, decides to build his restaurant right on there, and on the floor is a compass rose centered exactly where that magnetic anomaly was. And you've got to remember, this is the height of the Cold War, so everybody's looking for uranium, and the rumor gets out that there's this magnetic anomaly there, and Hank makes a comment that he's going to have to make the check room bigger so people can check their Geiger counters. Apparently they're all looking for uranium. You can see that the details are pretty popular at that time. So in 1951, the formal hotel opens, and here's some of the advertising that went out. This was, they're saying, fun is eventful, inevitable, and also fly in, drive in to the desert air. And this was actually, turned out to be like a Hollywood socialite place. The big event every year was the annual luau, and this was a big deal. As many as 1,400 people would show up. And the price of the ticket was $12.50, which sounds like hometown buffet today, right? But you have to remember, in 1958, $12.50, it'd take over $100 to buy what $12.50 bought in 1958 today. But for your money, you got all the roast pig you could eat. You got all the rum punch you could swill between 7 and 8. The ladies got fresh flower leis that were flown in from Hawaii, and you got authentic Hawaiian entertainment. And this went on for several years. This was the 6th annual, and that was in 1958. And from this flyer, you would be led to believe that you're going to be entertained by a well-endowed topless hula dancer. Well, there was a topless hula dancer, but it turns out it's the old Hankaroo himself. And he was a perennial men's hula contest winner. So a little bit of truth in advertising problem there. And this is Hilo Hattie, who was a professional Hawaiian entertainer, was sort of the headliner. She was a singer and a comedian. Some of the people that hung out at the Desert Air, you can see. Frank Sinatra had a place over in had a place in Tamara's Country Club. Would fly over in his helicopter, flown by his pilot. Let's see. William Boyd, better known as Hopalong Cassidy. Marilyn Monroe and Sophia Loren. Dan Callahan's sister, who helped him manage the airpark, made a comment. She came into the restaurant one day, and there's Marilyn Monroe and Sophia Loren sitting at the same table trying to out-cleavage each other. And there was some others. And here's Mr. and Mrs. William Boyd, another actor, I don't know his name, can't remember, dining at the Desert Air. There's airplanes out there. He had a home in Palm Desert, so I think he frequented the restaurant quite a bit. Here's Anne Francis in the pool. Beginning of the end, in 1958, they start talking about building the College of the Desert. And the problem is, in the education code, it says you can't build a school or a college within 2 miles of an operating airport. Well, they were within 2 miles of the Desert Airpark. And so Hank took them to court, and for whatever reason lost, because they obviously built College of the Desert. And I understand when the groundbreaking ceremonies that Hank actually buzzed him. I can't verify that, but I heard that anecdotally. And so in 1961, I think Hank just gets disgusted, sells his ranch to Bob Hope, and pretty much bails out of the desert, leaves his nephew, Dan Callahan, and his niece to manage the family's business, and goes back to LA. So Bob Hope, in turn, takes 90 acres of Hank's ranch and donates it for the site of the Eisenhower Memorial Hospital. That's what it looked like at the time. So in 1968, a group of investors under the name of the Desert Air Country Club buy the property. They build a golf course, a clubhouse, and 6 condos, which I think might still be there. They have plans for 300 corporate condos, and at least one of the runways of the airpark is still in use. And they have an approved plan from the county to build a 10-story, 500-room hotel. Although it was doubtful that it would be allowed to build something that tall in the desert at that time. But they had the approved plans. And they also wanted to build a 4,000-foot hard surface runway in the Whitewater River Wash. And I don't know if they were going to build that up, but that would be kind of spooky landing in a gully. First they were going to do it themselves, and then they decided to try to get the county to build it, which obviously never happened. They had a lot of plans, but in 1970 they sold out. And so today, about all that remains is a street in the Rancho Las Palmas Country Club called Desert Air, and I think what may be 6 of those 6 condos that were originally built. That's my presentation. Any questions?